Um, Thanks for joining us today, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm one of the events hosts here at Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to check out our lineup of upcoming virtual and live events by visiting our website at powells.com. If you don't already do so, please follow us on our social media channels via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Paul Tremblay in conversation with Stewart O'Nan, talking about the Pallbearers Club. Paul Tremblay has won the Bram Stoker, British Fantasy, and Massachusetts Book Awards, and is the author of Survivor Song, Growing Things and Other Stories, The Cabin at the End of the World, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, A Head Full of Ghosts, and the crime novels The Little Sleep and No Sleep Till Wonderland. In his latest work, The Pallbearers Club. What if the coolest girl you ever met decided to be your friend? Art Barbara was so not cool. He was a 17-year-old high school loner in the late 80s who listened to hair metal and had to wear a monstrous back brace at night for his scoliosis, and started an extracurricular club for volunteer pallbearers at poorly attended funerals. But his new friend thought the Pallbearers Club was cool, and she brought along her Polaroid camera to take pictures of the corpses. Okay, that part was a little weird. So was her obsessive knowledge of a notorious bit of New England folklore that involved digging up the dead. And there were other strange things, terrifying things that happened when she was around, usually at night. Decades later, Art tries to make sense of it all by writing The Pallbearers Club, a memoir. But somehow his friend got her hands on the manuscript and, well, she has some issues with it, and now she's making cuts. Seamlessly blurring the lines between fiction and memory, the supernatural and the mundane, The Pallbearers Club is an immersive, suspenseful portrait of an unusual and disconcerting relationship. Tremblay will be joined in conversation tonight by Stewart O'Nan, author of numerous books, including Ocean State, this one, Wish You Were Here, Everyday People, In the Walled City, The Speed Queen, Emily Alone, and Last Night at the Lobster, a national bestseller and finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. Today's event has we'll have an audience Q&A, so please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to ask a question. As well, if someone's typed a question you'd also like to know the answer to, please upvote that particular question by clicking the thumbs up button. Lastly, please support the authors and Powells by purchasing a copy of the Pallbearers Club from us. A link to buy the Pallbearers Club will be shared in the chat a couple of times during this event, as well as links to Stewart's books as well. And so, thank you both for joining us so much, and for all of you out there, and we're glad to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks so much. Hello, Portland, and all the ships at sea out there. Paul.
Stewart.
Is the Pallbearers Club a comedy?
Yeah, parts of it certainly are. I was kind of hoping that that the humorous parts would be humorous and the freaky parts would be freaky and the sad parts would be sad. I don't know, like I want it all.
Yeah, because the first thing that hit me was just that it's almost like repartee in a way between the two voices, between the voice of Art, who's sort of narrating, we think, straight his story, and then Mercy, who comes in on the margins and kind of, she snipes. And she's very funny and catty and knowing and clever, and can get underneath Art's skin, we feel.
Yeah.
When did you know that this was going to be, in a way, a conversation between the two?
When I decided, sort of that, like the title of the book fell into my lap, sort of that part of it. So then I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this amazing title?
You thought Babysitters Club, Pallbearers Club, it's a match.
Yeah. So once I knew it was going to be a found memoir, I just sort of followed that little logic thought process. Like, okay, if it's a found memoir, who found it? And what would they do with it? It's like, oh, this character, because it's going to involve her so much, like part of her story within the book, she's not going to be able to help but, not only comment at the end of chapters, that she has to comment in the margins. So I also needed to make sure that worked for the story too. So I think part of Mercy's role, particularly with the marginalia, is to sort of cut some of the maudlin, self-pitying narrative style of Art. I think if it was just Art, it would be a little bit ponderous. So, I think Mercy in some ways gets to be a surrogate reader and commenting on, what people are thinking potentially at that point in time.
Is she also the sassy, no bullshit friend?
Yeah, for sure. Although, I mean, I do think she, in a weird way, she's quite helpful to Art. Like, I think she does him some good too, for as much as she potentially does some catastrophic bad. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I was really interested in, I don't know if you do this with your books, and maybe you could, actually, I think I know you don't do this, but maybe you do sneakily, because I know when I first met you, you told me like, oh yeah, like I think I had 7 different agents with my first 7 books because they always wanted me to write the same thing, and you wanted to write something different. And I haven't changed agents like that, but I do want to write different books, except I end up retrospectively, not sort of in the moment. It seems weird that I always find like, oh, actually there is like a little carryover from the previous book, or a little thing that I like to, take and maybe go in a different direction. So in the case of this book, Survivor Song featured a really, strong, healthy friendship between Romola and Natalie. Like, their friendship was, definitely one sort of based on, more love and respect, et cetera. And they're put through the crucible for 6 hours. Whereas here's a much messier relationship, the kind where, like, when the two are together, it's so intense. But they're probably not great for each other. Certainly not when they're exposed to each other for long periods of times, but at the same time, they really can't quit that weird relationship either.
I'm saying it's almost the negative in a way. It's the friendship that tears you apart.
Yeah.
And yet still means the most, I guess, in Art's life of any other friendship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, you also bounce around in time in this, because Art is writing this memoir that's set back in the 80s. And then we actually have the composition time in the early aughts, and then even some later revisions to that. And plus, we have the sniping in the margins there by Mercy, which I think is, what's the year for that?
Yeah, present day-ish, maybe 2017, 2018. Although the last page,
word. It's the last word in a way.
Right. Yeah. And the very last page would be like 2022, I would say. The very last page. I'm not going to spoil the last page, but
no. Yeah, a lot of spoilers. That's the first thing I wanted to do when I was doing this, is not fucking spoil it.
Yeah.
Because it's beautifully done. I mean, the tension that runs through there, and the not knowing, the doubt that creeps through you, and not knowing exactly what's right and what's not right, and is really, really tasty. Super tasty. Well done. And both for that, also for the time jumps, and also that idea of that extra voice in the margins being such an integral part of the story, and almost a motive force in the story. Did you look for models out there that you'd already read and known and loved?
So it's funny. So even though there are 2 narrators, I often thought of them as one, like almost like 2 parts of a whole. And I don't know, you'll probably know the official academic name for this kind of novel, but like one of my favorite sort of genres of novel, or subgenres of novel, is what I like to call the first person asshole narrator. Something like William Kennedy O'Toole's Confederacy of Dunces.
Bright Lights, Big City, right?
Yeah, or more recently, Sarah Levine's Treasure Island with 3 exclamation points, which is such an amazingly funny book. So once I knew this was the direction I was going to go, I actually reread 3 books before I started the Pallbearers Club. Not as research, but just to, psych me up for the tone, the feel that I wanted. So I reread Sarah's book. I reread Nick Flynn's Another Bullshit Night in Such City.
Yeah, great book.
And I didn't reread all of it, but I dipped into and reread chunks of Pale Fire.
Oh, I was wondering, Pale Fire, because that's that's sort of the unseen, controlling narrator on the outside there.
Right.
I also thought of Mila Goldberg's Wicket's Remedy. Do you know that one? She does somewhat of the same kind of thing with the typography there. So there's like battling columns of whose story it is. But I want to go back to that first person asshole narrator. In this particular book, are we playing the game Who's the Asshole?
Well, so like when I say asshole, I mean more like, so it's someone who I feel like it's like, I love empathy tests as readers, where I'm presented with characters that really tests my empathy. In Art's case, he can be so sort of easily defeated, self-pitying, in a way. which is kind of hard to say because it's a
he's
big
a
chunk of my
gloomy teen.
personality. Yeah.
He's a moody
No,
teen.
exactly. He's an angsty teen, and he's never sort of left that sort of moment.
He's still an angsty teen.
Yeah, and I wanted him to feel. I want him to feel like a late '80s, early '90s indie rock song. I mean, because there is a musical component to this book that's important. I'm wearing my Husker Du or a Husker Du.
Yes,
t-shirt.
every chapter is a Husker Du tune
right.
there, and Bob Mould is sort of the muse that hovers over everything.
Yeah,
but a relatively uncaring Bob Mould, not the real Bob Mould.
Right,
who cares maybe too much.
Right. I mean, Bob never really appears as a character except in some anecdotes.
But his lyrics are throughout, right?
Oh yeah. Well, his titles for sure. Yeah. Oh, some of those titles are great hearts too. But
and you said that the feeling as well too. That it's not quite as gloomy as the Replacements, I think, but not quite as dead endy, but close. Close.
Yeah.
Right.
You see,
if we're in the Midwest, it would have been.
Yeah. Now, see, I'm talking me, actually probably Art too, so enamored with Husker Du. I always felt like that rivalry. I'm like, the Replacements, I'm sure they're good, but I'm just not. Minneapolis has one band for me, and it's Husker Du. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. England has, who's another band? The Beatles. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I want to say, how do you do that undercutting of art so well without stopping the momentum of the narrative? That always seemed to be the hardest part, because when you bring in that second voice, you have to let that first voice go.
Right.
And you're doing it a lot sort of on the sides, which keeps it ongoing, but occasionally you stop and do it at the end of chapters.
Right. I mean, one of the first things, just to even have like a physical difference between the two, and it helped me, the writer, try to keep them different, just in terms of like what their sentences look like. Art will speak with these big rambling parentheses, and I would never let Mercy use a parenthesis unless she was mimicking Art. She would use M dashes and not like big super long ones. So I mean, as simple as it sounds, it was like a nice, just for me to have like a concrete starting point. My hope with Mercy was, she was cutting and she was funny. I'd hope that she felt honest, but also at the same time, I hope it felt like, she could be winking and just like messing with whoever finds us too, like to leave room for more doubt that maybe, she's just here because she's entertained by all this.
And throughout, I mean, she's fucking with Art throughout. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And because her sections are much shorter, I think you can. I think that's one reason why you can get away with like, okay, we're going to stop the main, force of the narrative here and do something else. But
Right.
because we're with Art from the beginning, first character principle, we're latched onto him. We imprint on him early on, so that we always, even though his sections are longer and sometimes can be draggy because he's kind of mopey, we're already imprinted on him. So we want to get back to him because we care about him emotionally, but we also want to be with Mercy because she's funny and sharp and kind of exciting to be with.
Yeah.
And Art feels that way too, I think.
Yeah, no, Art even recognized that at some point. Says, all right, I'm going to skip this part to get to where Mercy sort of joins back up with me again. But I think I was
both lines work that way well, because we want to be in both of them.
Yeah, I mean, so like you sort of mentioned, Art tells you too much. He tells you everything about himself. Whereas Mercy doesn't really tell you anything about herself. You only know Mercy by, how she's reacting to Art and by what she's saying. She doesn't tell you her life story like Art does. So I don't know. I thought that was just that was a great opportunity also for the reader sort of to, to get their head spinning with Mercy, because you really don't know much about Mercy. Like, she's not forthcoming of very much information about herself other than what she says or what she does.
And a lot of what she says is simply denial.
Right.
She denies almost everything that Art says about her. She denies or redirects in a way.
Deny,
she's
accuse.
She's a lot of fun that way, I think.
Well, thanks.
The question I always get, which I hate to answer, so I'll throw it to you, is how do you get into the mind of this once teenage girl?
I don't know. So I mean, this book is so like weirdly autobiographical and personal. Maybe not weirdly. I should have said obviously. In the case of Art, so let me answer it another way. When we write a book, the book's going to mean stuff to us, the person who wrote it. That no, it's not going to mean anything that, it won't mean the same stuff to other readers. And I don't expect it to, because life happens as you're writing a book, right? When I'm going to explain it in this way, it's going to make it sound like a boring, stuffy book. And hopefully I think it's fun, but I don't know, in a lot of, in one way, not all the ways, but in one way, like this book thematically for me personally, Art and Mercy Struggling was really my own struggle with writing why I write, like how it's wrapped up with, anxiety, depression, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. And for a lot of it, that was sort of like a well I would go to for Art and Mercy when they were, whenever they were in conversation with each other explicitly, kind of thing.
Which makes more sense for that. This is actually one narrator fighting with itself.
Right.
So you wouldn't place her as your typical teenaged girl.
Yeah. So like, comparative to, so like with A Head Full of Ghosts where Marjorie's 14 years old, that I definitely felt like I was a lot more in tune with, when I was writing it in the mid 2010s, like what a teenager would sound like and stuff like that. With Mercy, I kind of felt like I had an open rein, because even she's, younger, or at the time when we meet her, is she like in her late teens, early 20s, or is she 100 years old? I don't know. Like, I kind of felt like I could go really sort of big and broad with her personality and it would still work, because she was always, the vision of her was never clear. It was always refracted through art.
But plus you already have the 80s language in your head. Right. You don't have to make up dialogue for a 15-year-old girl in 2009. Right.
For sure.
But did you do any voice research, listening to any tapes, or just your usual listening to people talk?
Just my usual. Like I do research when I have to, but I'm definitely not like, I dread research. I just don't feel comfortable, just because I never felt like I learned it. Like I was a math major, right? And I got my master's in math. Like I wasn't writing research papers where I had to cite, citations, and I just get overwhelmed at the thought of it sometimes. So really the main research I did is on Mercy Brown, who the Mercy Brown character is named after, which I had no idea. I don't know how I lived in New England my whole life and had never heard about, Mercy Brown, Rhode Island, quote unquote vampire, 1892, etc. So that was actually a lot of fun. Let's see, do I have it within reach? I do. The fun part about researching Mercy, it seemed like whenever I went online, including like the Smithsonian, everybody referenced the same book. It wasn't like it was references to like tons of books. They all referenced this, The Food of the Dead. By
solid title. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's so it wasn't just Mercy Brown. It was like all these, up to 40 different, mostly women who were exhumed and had their hearts removed and burnt and all that fun stuff, because, people thought their consumption / tuberculosis was due to, a prior family member coming back from the grave. They never used the word vampire then. It was only until after all the stuff happened, people started referring to it as a New England vampire thing.
Now, is that why Rhode Island rather than Mass?
Well, yeah, for Mercy Brown, for sure. Yeah. Although, I mean, the book opens in Beverly and spends a bunch of time in Providence too, but
yeah, a lot of time in Providence, I thought.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, art, like the weirdly autobiographical part, is really art is me in an alternate reality where I dropped out of college and joined punk bands. And I'm taking a lot of liberties with myself as a character too, because I didn't really learn how to play the guitar until my last year in college. So, I moved my own timeline around.
Well, I thought it was interesting about art because I think of art as being the least rock and roll person I've ever met in my life. But then it makes absolute sense. It makes an ironic sense that then he would try to sort of map himself onto that emotion and that ecstatic emotion and revolt of rock and roll, because in his actual life, none of that's there at all. Yeah,
no, and like that was obviously the appeal of punk to him too, after starting off as like, as Nick mentioned at the beginning, like, hair metal or Def Leppard fan, like, so many of these other bands that he finally, Art wasn't going to be up on stage in leather pants and pyrotechnics, but he could see himself up on stage, wearing jeans and a t-shirt and, three chords, maybe.
Not to hit a sore subject, but you don't want to be up on stage with pyrotechnics around Providence. I'm sorry, you don't want to do it. No. Don't do it, man.
No.
that's a much sadder story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Way to bring us down. I'm just
yeah, sorry, I can't help it. It's just the way I am.
Well, you already wrote a nonfiction book about fire, so I'm sure it's
Yeah. Gruesome. Use the word gruesome in a sentence, right?
Yeah.
So I'll ask the terrible question. What's next?
I have a short story collection come out next summer. It's called, what the hell is it called? It's called The Beast You Are. So I'd say, like, sort of a very loose monster theme. Not all the stories have a monster in it, but most of them do. The big sort of centerpiece of the collection is a 30,000 word novella that's original, hasn't been published anywhere else.
Nice.
And I've been joking because I know what mainstream reading America wants. I keep using this joke, but I'm going to use it again. I wrote this novella is an anthropomorphic animal novella with a giant monster and a cat that's a slasher. And I also wrote it in free verse, the freest of all possible verse. But I gotta say, it was the most fun I've ever had writing. I don't know if it's any good, but
Making me think of Toby Barlow's Sharp Teeth.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
No, I mean, I love that. I love that novel. I love Watership Down, both the book and the movie. As a child of the 80s, Secret of NIMH was on HBO all the time. So like all those made for kids, but not really darkly anthropomorphic animal stuff is like, oh man, everyone's got anthropomorphic animal story in them, don't they? At least I did. I've been sitting on it for a while. I wanted to do it as a novel, but I knew my publisher would never let me get away with it. So when they
I was going to say, I mean, how do you keep believing in that enough from day to day to day to day in that long form to keep it going without thinking, oh man, this is just silly. This is, because that self-doubt creeps in all the time. Right?
Oh, sure. Well, I think one thing is like I had thought like, hey, I'd had like the bones of the story for a long time. And I usually don't hold on to stories like that for a while. Like I wish I was someone who had a bullpen of ideas waiting for me. And I don't. I literally go from novel to novel. And then it's like,
I think most people are like that.
I don't know, some people, I don't know. I talked to a few that are like, oh yeah, I've got like these 4 ideas. I'm like, well, I wish I had that. But anyway, this was something I've had sitting around for a while. But I knew my publisher would never let me do it as a novel. Like, not that I would blame them either. So when they unexpectedly asked me for a short story collection, I was like, ooh, I'll do it as a novella.
Opportunity
for the collection. And actually, it's much better off at this length than not a full-blown novel. I don't know, like it. I mean, there's always doubt every time, but I don't know. I never was in the middle like, oh, this is terrible. I mean, I have terrible days where I think what I just wrote is terrible. I never thought of the whole thing as terrible. I thought, oh, this could be kind of cool, strange. And like I said, this doesn't mean it was easy to write. It wasn't, but it was fun. Like it made myself laugh out loud a few times. I was going
to say, I could kind of feel that in there because it is laugh out loud funny over and over and over again. But it's got momentum too. It's got some power there, especially toward the end, I think. Not giving anything away there, but well, it's got more throw weight to it than you think it's going to have, which is really nice, I think. But you've never gotten halfway through and just said, "Ah, fuck it, it's not working."
Oh no, I mean, for me, the halfway through isn't the danger point. Is the first 100 pages. Like once the glow of the beginning is sort of over. Then you're sort of
like how do I actually do this now?
Yeah, you're sort of like in the teeth of the middle sort of part. So I was like, the last time I quit after 100 pages was a book that I quit to write A Head Full of Ghosts. So I mean, that worked out. But for me, that always feels like, okay, if I make it past here, I have to, I'm going to keep going. It always helps to have a contractual deadline as well.
And that faith that you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a balance. Like, I don't know how you feel when you're writing your novels, but like, I never want to feel like, oh, like I'm just sitting here doing this by rote. Like I want every story to feel like, hey, this is totally different. This is totally new. But at the same time, I still want to be able to be like, okay, I've written, X number of novels. I've done this before. I can do it again. Like try to find the balance of keeping it fresh. I don't know. Like you told me once that you used to, you would literally like belt yourself to the chair to get some stuff written. I don't know.
Yeah, that's usually early on, you know, when
Yeah.
you want to just walk away from the page, you know, I tie myself to the chair, just one leg. I mean, not fully bound, but
Well, how about
but
like,
that idea of keeping it fresh and keeping it in a way dangerous, set yourself like an impossible goal, you know, to do something that you really probably shouldn't be doing, you know, writing in a certain point of view that you should be doing, or,
yeah,
you know, using a particular voice or style that, you know, like, you know, no one else is doing. You want to write a book that only you can write, and that challenges you throughout. You don't want to get about halfway through and say, oh, I know how this is going. I'll just do the rest of it, you know.
right.
But a book that challenges you all the way through, and challenges, I guess, your beliefs in life and how people are and how the world is, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, for sure. Do you ever have the temptation, because I know you love your research, have you ever had the problem of like you're writing in the book, you know, this is kind of, I'm going to go do some more research instead? Or do you try to get all the research done at first?
I'm always tempted to stop, you know, and just put the brakes on and say, oh, I really need to learn about this. And for certain subjects, you really have to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't write a Star Trek novel and fuck things up, because people will stab you. They will stab you on the street if you screw something up in Star Trek land. And the same is true for anything that's heavily historical. And that's why Prayer for the Dying is set, you know, long ago and far away in frontier Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You know, because then I can just make up whatever I want to make. And if I have the authority to make the reader believe it, then it exists, which is a really nice thing to do. Right now I'm reading Tessa Moshfegh's new one, Lap Nova,
I
which is
haven't read it yet.
beautiful opening from a fairy tale. It's this whole other world, and she just pulls you right in. You're like, okay, I'm there, and it's your thing, but I'm following along.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Trudy says I only write the book so I can do the research.
Yeah, I think I've heard you
Part
say
of that is true. I think I do love learning about stuff and satisfying my curiosity about things, anything, whatever it is. I mean, for a long time, I've had on the back burner a World War I novel about the Balloon Corps, because my grandfather was in the Balloon Corps. And just the idea of the Balloon Corps is just so fucking weird. You know, why would you ever volunteer to go in the Balloon Corps? It's a bad idea. I'll go up in a helium balloon and have people shoot at me. Okay, good idea. Smart. So.
Not a large target. It sounds very steampunk.
It would. Oh yeah, they definitely do it that way. But they get Roger Deakins to do the cinematography, and they'd win some Oscars. So why not? So. Right. And you, sir, any news from Hollywood, from the film world? Have they come knocking at your door? I think of some of your earlier books being almost tailor-made for film, and not like little teensy weensy film, but like big full screen. Let's do this film.
Yeah, well, I mean, Head Full of Ghosts has been optioned for 7 years now. Some ups and downs with that one. Same producers, you know, and it's not all their fault. We've come close to filming multiple times, including it probably would have shot the summer of 2020 if not for, you know, plague.
The COVID. Yeah.
But yeah, The Cabin at the End of the World is going to be a movie called Knock at the Cabin in February of 2023.
Oh.
Yeah, directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
No.
Yes.
M. Night. Wow. So then it's going to be set in Philadelphia, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't assume the cabin is going to be in downtown Philadelphia. Although
Rittenhouse Square.
Although there was a cabin built inside of a warehouse to film, very close to Philadelphia. But yeah, so it'll be set like somewhere. And
now, did you go to the set and see it?
I did go. I did get to. Yeah, I visited 2 days, which was a lot of fun.
You know, so you weren't there doing like rewrites the whole time.
I have no
dialogue here.
Yeah, I have no contractual say. It was they took the book, patted me on the head.
Check.
Yeah, I took the check.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's exciting that it's going to be a beautiful film. The director of photography, worked on the Robert Eggers movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's super intense. Actors are great. David Bautista as Leonard, Jonathan Groff, and a few other folks.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Have you seen rushes at all or dailies or?
When I was there, I got to see a couple of days of dailies, and that was actually a lot of fun. I got to see I don't want to spoil anything, but I got to see I got to see a very intense / gruesome scene, and it was pretty wild.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's like a dream come true for, a Fangoria guy like you.
Fangoria. Well,
Right?
it's I never had a subscription to Fango. My brother was definitely the Gorehound, even though he's like 5 years younger. No, like within our family, the apocryphal stories are of like when Poltergeist came out on HBO. What was that, like summer of '85 or something? I'm only like 15 or something, and Dan is like 10 years old or whatever. But we watched the movie 100 times. But whenever like the tearing the face off scene would come on,
Love that. I love that
yeah,
scene.
I had to leave the room, but I would make it look like, Dan, you can't watch this. You're too young. I would use him as my excuse. Meanwhile, like in 5th grade, he had a sleepover and was watching Texas Chainsaw. So, but I lived in my 20s and 30s. My brother had a Fangoria subscription, so when I went over to his house, I would look at it then. Yeah. So no, man, that stuff scared the hell out of me, Stewart. I was I always liked horror, but I was always terrified by it. Nightmares all the time.
You're more of a famous monstrous guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what sort of was the lure. It was like Godzilla and Creature from the Black Lagoon is what, sort of brought me in. But
so did you see some Godzilla films in the theaters back then?
No. For me, it was always Creature double feature.
Oh, nice.
That was a program that ran on the weekends in the Boston area.
Channel 56?
Channel 56. Yeah,
yes. No,
yeah.
Otherwise, this channel kind of sucked, I thought, 56. Besides that.
There was nothing else on.
38 guy. I was a big 38 guy.
Yeah, Movie Loft, sure.
Oh, hell yes, with Dana, yeah.
And the Red Sox, right? Weren't the Red Sox on 38?
They were, and I believe that Sean McDonough was Dana's like second in command on those.
Yeah.
And now he's off like doing the World Series and shit.
Right. Yeah, he's everywhere now. He's doing the hockey and stuff.
Yeah. He's still no Eck. You're no Eck. I'm sorry.
Who is?
Yeah.
Nobody.
So right now, what's getting you excited in the horror genre or the suspense genre?
Oh, man, I mean, I don't know. In some ways, I'm a horror hipster. I mean, film-wise, I tend to very much more enjoy, indie films as opposed to what, the studios put out, with the exception of Jordan Peele's movies, obviously. And maybe, A24, I mean, A24 is almost feels like,
they're always,
they almost feel like a major studio at this point, just given the quality of film that they put out. Book-wise, I'm so excited for everyone to get to read Mariana Enriquez's Our Shade of Night, which is coming in February. I got to read an arc. It's this big 700-page, sprawling, epic Bolaño meets cosmic horror novel. Set in the 80s during the Dirty War in Argentina, because she's an Argentinian writer, and it follows like this weird old family that's involved in this crazy cult. But much of the novel is really like this quieter character study of these different family members that end up intersecting, and there are just these wild, terrifying, disturbing starburst moments throughout.
Our Shade of Night.
Our Shade of Night. Yeah.
Our Shade of Night. Again, the author's name?
Mariana Enriquez.
Mariana Enriquez.
Yeah, okay. She had a couple short story collections. She's being published in English now recently. Like her first collection was called Things We Lost in the Fire, which is excellent. Yeah. So I'm most excited about that because I don't know. You asked me how old I was earlier. I can't remember if we were on screen or not. But I said, 51. And you think at your age or whatever age you are as an adult, you're like, oh yeah, my favorite set of books is set in stone, right? You think, oh, I'm going to enjoy books, but like, I don't know, you're never gonna be like, oh, my top 5. Like that doesn't change. Like this book is in my top 5. Like I was so excited to read it.
And it's 700. That's a heap and helping.
Yeah. And I tend to like shorter books, but a book like that reminds you of the pleasure of being lost for a week or two in a giant story.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
How about on screen, whether on TV or on film or? I mean, have you gotten like a viewer, a screener of Nope yet?
No.
Since you're such an industry insider, you get all this stuff. I was on set with M, and he just handed this to me.
No screeners. Saint Maud is a recent favorite, so it's an A24 offering. I love that movie. I really, I enjoyed Severance, the Apple TV show. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, we don't have the Apple Plus, so no. Yeah.
No, that's worth a watch.
I love Adam Scott, but
yeah. No, and John Turturro is, I mean, it's worth seeing him. And actually our friend Christopher Walken too
There he is.
is in Severance too, and it has a great role. Yeah. So those two sort of are what jump out. How about you? Any horror discoveries or watches or rewatches, reads, rereads lately?
I'm trying to think. No, nothing too great. I watch a lot of really bottom of the barrel horror, a lot of stuff from like the 1970s, like NBC TV movie starring Elizabeth Montgomery, kind of just really bad stuff, like with music by Jerry Goldsmith, and they're always driving these big Chevy station wagons with paneling on the side out to this house in the middle of nowhere where they lose power and are stalked by somebody. That's kind of my speed right now. But of course, I mean, Hereditary is, always a favorite. I mean, Toni Collette is just so good in every. She's my sort of. You didn't think you could do better than Jamie Lee, but Toni Collette is just freaking amazing when she takes on something like that.
Yeah,
and lets loose, and you can see the power in her acting there. And I know we're finishing up Better Call Saul. Of course, Giancarlo Esposito, I think, is scary as shit as Gustavo Fring. I mean, he's just the restraint that you see in him, everything going on inside. I just love that, but not too much else. I mean, we're watching everything that comes out. I mean, it's still kind of semi-COVID land in a way. I mean, a lot of our viewing habits, I think, are still the same. So we're just absorbing this mountain of junk, and here it all comes. So,
before we go to Q&A, can I ask you, I mean, speaking of horror, you've collaborated with Stephen King a couple times in the past. Any plans to do any more collaborations with him, or?
No set plans, but I mean, you never know. I mean, we're always talking, and we're excited about the Red Sox getting back into contention, at least for the wild card right now, and maybe getting Eovaldi back and getting Sale back, and like getting some kind of pitching back would be nice.
They need some bullpen.
No, not too much. No plans. I got a new book that I'm going to start. I'm kind of like in that wool gathering, information gathering mode right now, which is really, for me, a lot of the fun. I'm starting to do notebooks and filling out notebooks with details and ideas and emotions and settings and all kinds of stuff, that sort of the ingredients that are going to end up going into this big stew. And we'll see. The title is actually rather close to your title, so I'm not going to give it away, but it's a club. It is a club.
It's a club.
It's not the Hellfire Club, which when I saw the T-shirts, and Stranger Things, I'm like, the Peter Straub novel. This is awesome. It's the Peter Straub novel.
I thought the same thing.
Not a word about, and that's the era of the Peter Straub novel. It's the Peter Straub novel. It's like,
different story though.
They did flash the talisman though during one of the final episodes for season 4, and I'd heard a little chatter that the Duffer Brothers might be taking it on.
I saw that recently online somewhere. That's True. Likely their next project.
Just a rumor.
That'd be cool.
Which of your books would you like them to take on?
I don't know. Well, it's funny. Disappearance of Devil's Rock in 2016 came out like the same week. As Stranger Things did. So both had kids on bikes. Both had one kid disappear. Both had like the single mom receiving strange messages. But obviously Stranger Things went in a much more fun place than Disappearance at Devil's Rock did. So maybe that would be kind of funny to see them do Disappearance at Devil's Rock.
Nice.
Shoot, what the hell was I just going to say? Oh, it's gone. Oh, no. Well, I was going to say to you, the Pallbearers Club, just briefly, like a kid at my school that I teach at started a Pallbearers Club. That's how it literally fell into my lap.
Amazing.
I don't know if it was successful, but he went up in front of the school and made an announcement in front of the school. It's like, hey, I'm starting this club called the Pallbearers Club. And I was half asleep. I was like, what? Instantly woke up. When he described it, what it is, volunteering at a funeral home to serve elderly and homeless that don't have a lot of living relatives. As a teacher, professional adult, I was like, oh, that's a very sweet very nice community service thing to do. But as like the writer, it's like, oh my God, I have to use this.
Yeah, oh, no doubt.
Yeah, so that's
Now,
what I came from.
did you then approach him and say, hey, I'm going to steal your life?
Well, I didn't steal his life. I just stole the club title. And I did at the time Google, and there were other. I did see that there are other Pallbearers clubs, or at least references to them in other parts of the country.
So you think he got that idea from them, or is it just?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I'm sure. I think I asked him. I remember asking him like after, like a few months after. He said, "Yeah, we only did it like once or twice or something." But that's all I remember. That's all I choose to remember, Stewart.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for your input. Go away.
Yeah, I told
this the Q&A. We got to do the Q&A here.
Yeah, Q&A. All right.
Getting short on time, so I'll start with Stephen Helmig. He says, "Hi, Paul. Did you write the two character perspectives simultaneously, or did you write Art's narrative first, then go back and write Mercy's?"
I wrote them simultaneously. I mean, I'm sure there might have been a couple times where, like, when I was going through a chapter, I might have gone back. But I would say, in general, in the moment of Art's writing, I would stop and put in Mercy. And that was kind of a fun part, was because I felt like I was, I just write in Microsoft Word, so it was kind of a pain because I'd have to stop, create like a text box bubble, and get like the red font from somewhere else and type it in. So I don't know. It made me feel like an engraver of a sort.
Yeah, I like that. But there was a little bit of a hiccup with, I guess, the Amazon version of the book or the Kindle version.
Yeah, that'd be one way of putting it. A little, yeah. So they put it out and it's unreadable. So they're trying to make a new one. But hopefully everyone just buys a physical copy of Powell's. No, not to like.
They didn't test it before they ran it out there?
That's a very good question. But I would like to, yeah. No, it's not good, not ideal. But they're fixing the ebook. There will be a new version up by or on the 19th, hopefully sooner than that.
Okay, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Second question, Faye Ringel asks, "Paul, Faye here. I'm curious as to whether your editor, publisher, publicist, agent, etc. were familiar with the New England vampire belief. And you're in good company. When I interviewed Stephen King and Charlie Grant in the 70s, they hadn't heard about it either."
Oh, that's so cool. Faye is a renowned New England folklore scholar. I've met her many times. Hi, Faye. Thank you for the question. Geez, I don't know. Like my agent really isn't. Well, he has horror clients now, but he's not steeped in horror, so no, he had no idea. And I don't think my editor didn't really. I don't recall any conversations about Mercy coming up. So I guess the short answer is yeah, no. Like certainly no one in my weird little circle of publishing.
They just went with it.
Yeah, they just went with it.
Nice.
Yeah, so I will say it does feel, from what I've researched, it does certainly seem that Mercy's story has, I don't want to say been rediscovered or rebounded, but it feels like, from what I've seen online, the discussions of it, it's become more popular in the last 10 years. And, you can go visit her grave and people put stuff there. I'm not quite sure what people are looking for when they leave things on Mercy's grave. That's interesting.
I wonder if there'll be a boom now with your book.
That'd be fun. Oh, I mean, well, I think they're on like, it might be on like a second headstone at this point. When I say on, like, I think people are like taking chunks.
Yeah.
There is like a big metal stanchion behind it, so no one takes the current headstone. I might be conflating other sort of New England vampire-y stuff too, where other people have stolen pieces of people's stones and graves, but yeah.
I'll have to put a fence all the way around it there.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be like McCoy Stadium eventually.
And have me inside next to
every
it.
piece.
Hey, everybody, and hand out a book.
Next one is actually for me. It's from RJ Thibault. Stewart, this is Russ, your friend from the depressing mill town of Woonsocket. What is next for you? Ocean State was terrific. Thank you, Russ. Thanks for tuning in, especially. Next, this new book I'm working on. It's older folks, people in their 80s, writing about people in their 80s. So I'm sure to be thrilling. I mean, I guarantee a Hemsworth will be in this one. No doubt about it. So Thor.
There's going to be a heist.
Living. Next from Nick Rem. Hey, Paul, love the Pallbearers Club. In a lot of ways, it felt like a one-way conversation between Art and Mercy, and certain moments felt exceptionally meta, where you're essentially critiquing your own writing in real time. You do something similar in your novella, Notes from the Dog Walkers. Do you often find writing as being a sort of conversation with yourself? Is that something that you consciously consider, or is it something that happens organically and you just kind of roll with it?
Man, I certainly, well, it depends on the story. Like I can't do that if it's not going to serve the story. So like, Notes from the Dog Walkers, is this, weird, hopefully fun novella where it's told through notes left by people who walk my dog. And that sort of was a narrative like technique that I'd held on to for a while, because I was like, once we had a dog walker for the first time ever, I was like, these notes are great. I have to write a story using notes from dog walkers, but what am I going to tell? How am I going to do it? And it took me a long time to figure out how it would work without it hopefully seeming like hopefully it wouldn't seem like it's just a cheap, ploy or gadget.
Well, it's a conceit, but if you can make the conceit work, if you can fulfill the conceit and make it fun, then the reader forgives you everything, right?
Right. It has to be there, for a thematic purpose. I mean, even if I can't explain to myself in the moment, by the time I finish the book, I have to be able to explain why everything's there. And if I can't, then it's going to go, right?
Right. I always like to say that my choices are to make sure that I can bring the world of the character as powerfully across to the reader as possible. And that's why I've chosen this weird point of view or this weird structure.
Like second person for A Prayer for the Dying.
Yep. Couldn't write that in anything else and still have that effect there. It goes back to Poe, right? Total effect, right?
Had you tried? Sorry, really quickly. Had you tried first person, or did you start?
Yes. I tried first person. It was too close. I tried third person. It was too distant. And that second gave me that second is like first, and it can hide things. It can be unreliable in a way that third can't quite be as unreliable. Though you found a way to make third unreliable very well. I think you've taken that a little step further. I've never tried to do the unreliable third, which I always thought about it, but never saw the opportunity. Anonymous attendee. So this is definitely not Roger Stone. With horror becoming more mainstream, do you think that publishing in small indie presses is still a viable route for new writers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially I think in the horror and science fiction and fantasy communities, there are a lot of great, independent presses, like Word Horror, Tachyon. In the UK, Titan Books is really an independent publisher as well. So no, I think there's a lot of amazing stuff being done in indies. Writers like Eric LaRocca and Haley Piper, and no, I mean, and that's where I sort of came from as well. Like a monster, I came from the indie presses. So yeah, I don't know. It's funny, Stewart. I don't know how you feel about this, but you always hear people, "Oh, horror's having a moment right now," which always sort of cracks me up because that implies, it's both condescending and also implies it's going to end, right? It's having a moment, singular. So, like, who knows? Like, I mean, it does seem like mainstream publishers are certainly publishing more horror. A lot of them still don't put horror on the spines, but I don't really care about how you market it. Just
it may be that there is not just a lot. There's not a lot, at least in film. There's not a lot of great big budget horror. It's just not out there.
Yeah.
But small budget horror, I mean, there's always some small budget horror film that ends up making more money than any of the big budget horror films. You think of Blair Witch Project or Blumhouse's idea that we're not going to spend more than $1 million to make this movie for how many years. It's a proving ground. It's got a lot of young talent in it. And it's a place a lot of people start out. I'm always looking for the next good horror film. Meredith Gailmore. Hi, Paul, you're the best. My question, how do you know when you've finished telling a story? Your work always leaves such room for the unknown, but still gives closure. How do you know when your stories have ended? Are there any stories you wish you could continue or go back to?
Wow. Great question. I mean, I typically, when I have an idea, like I really have an idea for something, I typically have, and it's not set in stone, but I definitely have an idea for the beginning and the ending. And for me, the writing part is how do I get from A to Z? And some things change, have changed their endings by the time I get to them. So I don't know, oftentimes for so many of my books, like that ending is sort of the carrot at the stick. Or actually most of my books, I feel like I have some scenes in mind. Usually they're about the 2/3 waypoint that I use as the carrot. Like I'll never skip ahead and write those. I want to, that helps me get through the middle of the book. I don't know if I'm
have you ever tossed an ending that was sort of in your head for a lot of the writing, and then you got there and you're like, no, that's not right. I got to do something else.
With Disappearance of Devil's Rock, the draft I turned into my editor had a different ending. it went into like the people who moved into the house afterwards. And this is not a big spoiler. And that wasn't right. My editor was a big help with me trying to, figure, that was the hardest book for me post draft. Like I moved a bunch of stuff around and the ending changed. I had an ending in mind for Cabin at the End of the World, but that changed after Trump got elected. And I was only like 50 pages into the book at that point. I mean, it definitely changed for the better. I mean, that's not, I would rather have Trump not got elected and had a worse ending for the book. I would make that trade in a heartbeat. But yeah, really like Cabin and Devil's Rock, really the only two books where there were big changes to the end. Now, when I say that with Pallbearers Club, like I knew what the last line of the book was going to be, but I didn't know what the big sort of what the end would be. So that one, it was a lot more vague until I sort of got there and figured it out.
It's a great last line.
Thank you.
It's a really great last line. Yeah, it's perfect. Ron Clinton, Paul, is SST doing a limited edition of the Pallbearers Club?
Yes, they will be. I don't think we've started. So SST is a British publisher, Stewart. They do amazing, beautiful work. And Paul's like such a pleasure to work with. We've had like the same Italian artist. Why am I spacing on his name? That's so terrible. Because I've been thinking of his.
Awful. You're a bad person.
Daniel Serra.
There you go.
Or Danielle Serra. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're okay.
Yeah. So yes, short answer is there will be an SST.
Now, are these signed by both you and Mr. Serra?
I know they're signed by me. Yeah, they must be signed by him as well. Actually, I'm not sure. That's terrible. I don't know.
The
I know
Super
I've
Deluxe
signed
edition should have both, right?
Yeah.
Last question, Stephen Simmons. I just bought Pallbearers at Powell the other day and love it so far. I'm an early 80s Husker Du fan, haha.
Yes.
And this feels so far like a Midwestern novel. Are you from the Midwest? I'm hoping there's a chapter with title of Whatever or I'll Never Forget You.
Yeah, no. Well, there's no Whatever, I'll Never Forget You. Sorry, that's not a spoiler. Well, but
just ample opportunity, right?
Yeah, no Midwestern. I'm like a hopeless parochial New Englander. I lived in and around Boston my whole life, with the exception of the 4 years I lived in Providence and the 2 in Vermont for college. Yeah, so no, always around New England. You need maybe like to make it seem less Midwestern. You need some of the Boston accent, like Aunt Barbara. But you need to hear people talking like that.
That was going to be my very first question, which was, Art Barbara, where did you come up with that?
So in downtown Providence, do you remember the Biltmore, that hotel?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So it's been since bought out. It's still there, but it's no longer called the Biltmore. It's called the Graduate. The Graduate. And when I went in, I think I was there for 2019 for a horror convention, and the hotel rooms were totally remade over, so it didn't look like the old drippy Biltmore anymore. It looked like hipster hotel rooms, like splashy colors, but the wallpaper on the walls were like this fake hand-drawn in library shelves of books. And some of the book titles were real and some were fake. And there was one book that said something about something of Art Barbara. And I was Googling it, seeing, is this an actual book? It's like, oh man, that name just cracks me up, because I was just thinking of Art Barbara in either a Rhode Island or Boston accents. It's like, I'm definitely going to use that name at some point. So that's where it came from.
Really, really nice. Well done. Well done. It's a great book. It's a really great book. And I was, again, there's a book that I really loved. Claire Beams has a book called The Illness Lesson.
Yes, excellent. I read it. Yep.
That you have that same kind of balance in it, that as a reader, man, this is way off kilter. Something is really, really, really wrong here. And yet you, as the writer, you sort of lead us through it, by the hand, and your hand is never too heavy on us. We always feel that, we're the one going through it, but you have us all the way there, and we're always, which way is it going there? And it's a wonderful guessing game.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
I'm honored. No, and thank you. And I want, publicly, for all you've done for me. In a weird way, I was almost like a little nervous, not because we've hung out many times. I was like, oh, I'm being like interviewed by my mentor professor. No, but thank you. I appreciate it.
We got to hang out again. We got to crack some Gansets. And
well, I think StokerCon is going to be in Pittsburgh
Get the fuck out.
in next May,
Next
May
May?
2023. So
Cool.
I am planning on driving to Pittsburgh. So I will.
Outstanding. We have
definitely
much
see you
beer
then.
here. We
Yes.
even have the Gansett.
All right.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, thank you. So we bring Nick back in, I guess.
Yep, I'm coming back.
Yay.
Hey, all right. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. It was awesome for your conversation and all that. And thank you all for joining us out there. Want to encourage you, yes, to go pick up a copy of the Pallbearers Club. Also, yeah, you can definitely check out Ocean Street.
Sure, I do both.
So, and while you're there on pals.com, get those, check out our list of upcoming events, and we hope to see you all at an event soon. And once again, thank you both so much for joining us. Yes,
Support your public library. Please support your public library.
absolutely, definitely. So, well, thank you both so much. Thank you all out there, and have a good one.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
so much.
Pauls.
Bye.